On this lonely sliver of Caribbean rock, a disgraced math teacher built a pleasure palace, then wired it like a CIA safe house, every chandelier hiding a lens.
The FBI drilled Epstein's safe after he was arrested, and they took out anywhere from hundreds to thousands of DVDs.
They are videos that exist.
I was trafficked to other billionaires, politicians, professors, even royalty.
2 decades later, he's dead. The tapes are missing, and the internet is stuck on all the wrong things.
I've tried not to focus on whether or not Epstein killed himself. I think that's kind of a red herring.
Today, we ask a different question. Who built Jeffrey Epstein? And why was he worth protecting at all costs?
So my name is Anya Wick, but at birth, I was Anya Beth Epstein. I had chemically driven amnesia the majority of my life. I am Jeff Epstein's niece, and I was raised as a sex slave. My father had me separated from my mother and twin brother and administered a substance that was designed to sever my memory. Every time I was taken to or family vacation or trip to the cabin in the mountains, I was given this drug upon which everything would come flooding back. But when it wore off, so would the majority of my memories of it. And I would try to go to school, perform with my bands, be a regular person.
So would you say then that some of the techniques used on you would be classified under the MK Ultra program?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you explain that? Could you explain that for viewers who are not familiar with MK Ultra?
Okay. These drugs were administered to me when I was an infant. Macro doses were given every single time I was assaulted. And I was kept on micro doses the rest of the time in my waking life to maintain some control, some separation from my peers. I actually didn't realize until very recently that I was kept on micro doses, that I was kept on a small dose in my regular waking life. So I was put on these large doses designed to knock me out when I was assaulted. Small doses to keep me complacent the rest of the time. What this did essentially was sever my memory. Everything that happened to me, everything that was boasted about to me, that occurred on those large doses was locked away in what I thought was a nightmare fantasy world. I was primarily unconscious for the physical assaults. And if I was awake, I was so high, I thought it was my own nightmares. This ensured I wasn't going to go telling anybody about it. This ensured I thought I was sick. So when they paid a doctor to tell me that my PTSD responses, like jumping when my stepmother touched me, were bipolar, I believed that. I believed it was my fault. They told me that we belonged to the cult of Baal, B-A''A''L. They told me this with consistency while I was being abused. Now, what you can look up about the cult of Baal, information that is publicly available, is that it is thousands of years old. It is a Phoenician satanic fertility cult And publicly, it's supposed to have been eradicated. But to my knowledge and my experience, it is not.
Baal was the name of the god who was worshipped throughout Canaan and Phoenicia in ancient times. During the Judges period, the practice of Baal worship entered Jewish religious life. Judges, chapter 3, verse 7, NIV. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs.
My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly. But behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists. This is what people perceive the Illuminati to be. It is a group of elites that practices forced and uses these crimes to control people. They happen to have a huge reach over politics and entertainment.
Infant sacrifice was a significant part of the cult of Baal, a Phoenician or Canaanite god. Infant children were sacrificed to Baal in order to secure prosperity. Baal was god of prosperity because he controlled the weather, which is crucial in any agricultural economy.
I have memories of men being forced to assault me when they didn't want to. I remember one man, this brilliant comedic actor, actually his better dramatic work. My father's screaming at him, telling him to penetrate me, and he makes one thrust and backs away, and my father gets outraged and says, "You're going to come. You're going to come." And this poor man is crying throughout it. And I'm barely conscious. Jeffrey may have been involved in the full-on occult practices, but he's not one of the hardcore of this sickness where they are actually attracted to small children. The public has caught on to this, but they call them the Illuminati. And I find that interesting because Illuminati means illuminated. I perceive the Illuminati, in fact, to be individuals like yourself, other conspiracists like Alex Jones, even people like Kanye West who have been trying to illuminate people to this. I do not believe it is a unified organization, but a loose collection of individuals who are illuminated to the cult of Baal. I have met everyone who has been an American president in my lifetime, including Donald Trump, who I have to say looked like he was at a funeral when he was at the inauguration the second time around. I don't think he wanted any part of it. I have met the Kardashians, which is why I believe Kanye West has appeared to have gone off his rocker.
These Illuminati. That's why Cardi B was over there. Cardi B is a plant by the Illuminati. She don't write her raps.
Would you say that most people at the top of politics are compromised?
Yes. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I know exactly who Donald Trump was talking about when he spoke of the New York elites during his first campaign cycle. He had no mention of them during the re-election. because after that first presidency, he realized he had no pull on his own strings. And he was not going to be able to do anything to expose this.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
I believe Obama wanted to do a lot more that he promised in his campaigns, as far as reasonable socialization of our resources, to bring us up with the rest of the developed world when it comes to providing housing and healthcare and basic human rights, and found his hands tied because in America, people must be kept poor and busy so they don't realize how much more power they have when they are unified.
And would you say that these politicians who are compromised, it's of a sexual nature mostly?
If a politician is not born into the cult, they are forced to engage in criminal acts or submit themselves so that those who are born in trust they cannot snitch on what they are witnessing because the families got dirt on them too. We see the same thing in Hollywood and in the music industry. Of course, Justin Bieber has talked about being assaulted by Usher and Justin Timberlake at P. Diddy's parties, but I don't think it's a coincidence they've only gone after Sean Combs and not his other alleged perpetrators who were born into the bloodline. There seems to be a level of protection for people who are simply born into that world, contrasted with people like Sean Combs or R. Kelly, who joined as adults.
So we had ex-wizard Satanist from Bohemian Grove on a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And he mentioned he told us a story about the Clintons at Bohemian Grove. Did you have any experience of the Clintons or about Bohemian Grove?
I have met both of them and their daughters at Bohemian Grove and at resorts in Colorado. They loved going to ski lodges in the off season. They were not there in Aspen 2007 after the comedy festival. That's one I remember most vividly. But it's all fuzzy. I don't know if we were in Steamboat or in Breckenridge. But I've met them a few times and boasted all the time about how well she got along with Bill. She boasted about that even when we were sober.
So Bill tried to distance himself from Jeffrey. Do you think there was a lot more going on between them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't tell you what exactly, but Bill was on the flight logs because he went to the island. He also went to many, many other places where me and other children were present.
Which takes us to the portrait of Bill Clinton in the dress at Jeffrey's house. What was the significance of that?
Bill has engaged in sexual acts where he was on the receiving end. And there's the metaphorical submission. He was likely forced to engage in acts against children that he didn't want to engage in, which is associated with weakness, which unfortunately is associated with femininity.
Many of us suspect that Jeffrey Epstein was an asset to Mossad, and that Ghislaine Maxwell was in fact an agent of Mossad. There's a lot of evidence that point to this direction, and that they were operating a blackmail operation in order to get very powerful people, including people like yourself, in precarious positions to where you could potentially work on behalf of the state of Israel.
Epstein had relationships with three former Israeli prime ministers. Ehud Barak was his buddy, and he arranged a meeting with JP Morgan executives for Netanyahu, or for those executives with Netanyahu. He comes from the heart of the Zionist movement, and he was hooked up with this socialite, Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was a key mover for Israeli intelligence, was extremely influential in European politics, got a de facto state funeral in Israel attended by current and former Mossad chiefs. How did she just wind up in his midst?
And we have every right to ask, on whose behalf was he working? How does a guy go from being a math teacher at the Dalton School in the late 70s with no college degree to having multiple airplanes, a private island, and the largest residential house in Manhattan? Where did all the money come from? And no one has ever gotten to the bottom of that because no one has ever tried. And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that.
この動画をご覧いただき、ありがとうございました。高評価、チャンネル登録をよろしくお願いします。